this morning after a very, to say the least, volatile trading session on Thursday. The stock was up more than 5% at one point during yesterday's session before closing 3% lower at the close. And this came after Nvidia delivered another beat and raise quarter on Wednesday afternoon. So that is the focus of the morning trade. And joining us now is Nicole Petallides for a closer look. What's sort of been the reaction since we got this earnings report? Because everyone was sort of jumping up and down that this was fantastic, and then we saw the movement in the stock yesterday afternoon.
Movement, that is so, it was insane. And I have to tell you, I walked out with some of the traders, Peter Tuchman in particular, we were pushing open the bulletproof heavy doors, and he said, whoa, what a day.
Yeah.
And really, when you think about Nvidia, people were so excited about such a great quarter, and the outlook really quelled those concerns about the AI bubble, only to see that stock move $16. I mean, when it was at $196 at the high, people were cheering. It was getting closer to its all-time highs, only to see it go and break below 180. It closed at 180 today. The range has been so narrow. The high today is 182 and the low 176. So much better picture. But I will tell you, when we look at the price targets, in fact, the average price target now from FactSet is higher. It's at 250 after the report from 234. So there's still a lot of optimism. You know Dan Ives' comments yesterday where he talked about that this is the AI revolution. It should really make, he talked about beating China out. He also gave us the quote yesterday. This, as Jensen Huang was talking about the Blackwell chip sales being off the charts, but that this was the moment, the major validation moment for the AI revolution. That's what Dan Ives said. So there's still a lot of believers, but there's still a bigger picture, but the worry is not Nvidia at the moment.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. It doesn't seem that the concerns are stemming exactly from Nvidia. I mean, this is not an Nvidia story, and that's what I kept hearing yesterday. Even though Nvidia was sort of leading the market lower, this is not a problem with Nvidia. This is coming at a time when there's just so many questions around AI valuations. I mean, Michael Burry has been highlighting depreciation, and we've been talking about this circularity of financing as well, which Nvidia is very much part of. But to your point, I mean, you've got most people in a buy camp, a strong buy camp. But what I thought was really interesting in the overnight session in Asia was we saw this tech wreck following what we saw from Nvidia. It's really like the Pied Piper as far as that sort of global ripple effect is concerned. SoftBank, which actually sold its entire stake in Nvidia, was down 10%. What does that tell you? It sort of suggests that the AI concerns and the sort of underlying worries here about what is going on in technology are bigger than just Nvidia.
I talked about SoftBank throughout my last hour. I think that is such a big part of this story. Citigroup actually did a whole investigation into the SoftBank story. If you remember back in the dot-com bubble, it was SoftBank that sort of busted first.
Right.
And the question Citigroup was saying it might be the case this time as well, that it broke before, right? Beforehand. And what we saw, you mentioned the 10% sell-off in SoftBank. And we know that they had sold off Nvidia shares over the years to get into Uber and all these other things.
Yeah.
But in this case, they are so heavily invested in OpenAI. It was to the tune of $64 billion, $62.4 billion.
Yeah.
That's an 11% stake in OpenAI, which really, OpenAI is so busy in the circular funding, which you've talked so much about here on the show, and that is the concern. This it's unprecedented, so nobody really knows how to evaluate it. So you have the circular investing, which leads to that question mark and instability to a certain extent. The private credit story is another one. And KKR, for example, is down 17% in 3 months.
Yeah.
If you see the disparity between the markets and private credit, at one point someone said to me, look at the S&P and look at how private credit's crashing. And the rest of the story is we're breaking the 50-day, you have Bitcoin down below 80,000. I mean, you have things breaking down, but people are still remaining positive.
Yeah, it's like this cautious optimism in the market right now about technology. I mean, everybody knows that it's going to, somewhat provide some efficiencies and, all this innovation. It's going to improve our lives. But it's just how we get there. And you raised such an interesting point around, how the debt to equity ratio has been such a big focus of the market. I mean, look at Oracle this morning, down 6.5%. This has been such a big focus as to how it's actually getting its hands on its money to fuel its AI ambitions as well. But I just want to get back to Nvidia and some of the price targets and stuff that you mentioned, particularly in the wake of the earnings, what the analysts have been saying. You mentioned China, and we know that Jensen Huang has been quite keen to continue to get that stuff back into that market because he sees it as important, but it's almost like everything seems okay sans China right now. It's got to a point like if China says, right, we're going to welcome all these chips back, that's now an added bonus.
For sure. That is the cherry on the cupcake.
Yeah.
Because all of these numbers that Jensen Huang himself said, you know, he couldn't believe the lackluster response to his incredible quarter. And you talked about not only the quarter, where you had 57 billion, right, in the quarter, and the outlook at $65 billion outlook. I mean, there was no doubt. It was incredible. So that was the good news. And this is all sans China, as you said, ex-China. So that would be a great thing. The last thing, and number one thing that can change this market around, the guests tell me, and you've seen it today with Williams, and you already mentioned it, rates. If we feel comfortable that we're getting a rate cut in December, that can change the entire picture. And we've already seen it happening. If there's confidence in a rate cut, the market wants a rate cut.
Nicole, so good to chat with you this morning. Thanks so much for breaking down everything that we saw in Nvidia over the last week. It's been a wild ride. I think our necks all hurt from the whiplash that we've got as well. Let's trade it now with Dan Deming, Managing Partner, KKM Financial. How are you approaching your example for Nvidia, Dan? Good morning. Happy Friday.
Good morning, Sam. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced that we've seen the bottom in Nvidia yet, and in the tech sector in general. When you look at the price action today, you're looking at the semis and the tech sector continuing to find selling pressure, where most of the other sectors in the market are actually higher today. So it does appear that there's still some question about valuation in the tech sector. Nvidia is actually breaking down here from the levels that it was holding earlier this morning. And I think there's still the potential for further downside. So today's trade example is to capture further downside, but have the opportunity to get put into the stock down around that 200-day moving average, which comes in around 154. So I think that today I'm looking at a short day to trade for December. So just a little bit outside of the expiration here coming up tomorrow for November, the next cycle. And buying the 178, 168 put 1x2. You can put this on for a credit. So you can put this on and get paid to put this on for about $2.35 versus 177.5 in the stock. So you have a nice range to the downside. You have the option to get put into the stock around that 200-day moving average, where I think there's just going to be a much more significant support level, and then still have a range to capture to the downside. And if we see the stock rip higher, you still get to collect that credit from putting this position on.
Okay, perhaps some further downside for Nvidia. They're trading at 173 and change right now off the back of what has been a very bumpy week, to say the least. I'm just going to park that there. Want to get your sort of overall thoughts on the market today. We're seeing some degree of stabilization off the back of that sell-off we saw yesterday. There had been some conversations around distribution as maybe the cause here, as far as basically not having a catalyst to why we saw such a move to the downside yesterday. It was sort of a confluence of factors. But as we get up and running today, we've got Eli Lilly hitting $1 trillion market value. What are you seeing out there right now, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at across the various sectors of the market, really the majority of the sectors are higher on the day. You're looking at the selling pressure continues in the semis and in the tech sector, those big names in the tech sector. Energy is pretty much flat on the day, but you're looking at other parts of the market. Look at the small caps holding on to a nice gain today. Of course, maybe that's in reaction to yields moving lower on the heels of some of the Fed speak. But also, I do want to point out, Sam, that even though we're seeing yields move lower pretty much across the board today, the CME FedWatch tool is still showing only a 25% chance of a cut in December. So the market's still not pricing in a cut in December, even though we're seeing yields come off based on some of the Fed dialogue. So is that going to be enough, that lower yield today, to hold the markets together? We'll have to see. But yeah, the selling pressure still persists in the areas that it's been focused on. But you are seeing at least some buying pressure in some of the other sectors today.
Yeah, I mean, we did see the S&P 500 actually starting the day higher, looking to rebound here, but we actually lost some steam over the course of the last half an hour or so. So we're down around a tenth of a percent right now, 65.31. Dan, thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend. Talk to you later. Dan Deming, Managing Partner, KKM Financial.